Hey guys, Elliot here. Welcome back to another video. Today we'll be talking about embedded formulas. So last few videos we were talking about the VLOOKUP. Before that we were talking about the if-error formula. And even before that we were talking about the if formula. If you haven't seen any of those, please go check out my formula playlist. All of these videos are basically working on top of one another and they kind of work in a sequence. So this is pretty far along. Also, down in the description, I have a Dropbox link for you to go and download the Excel sheets that I use, and they're all blank for you to work alongside me as you're watching the video. So let's get started. Here we have our normal data set. We have a little data set right here with just the check numbers. You'll see here we have a balance up here, but that'll change in a minute and I'll show you how. Over on the L column we have a pick header. Over here in my notes you have the VLOOKUP, you have the if, you have the if error. All of these formulas will be prevalent in today's video. You have your normal lock cells function as we work. You have the embedded formulas, and what that is, it's a formula within a formula, and the inner formulas do not need an equal sign. We briefly saw this in the last video where I was talking about how you can put if error on the outside of a VLOOKUP function, and those two formulas can work together to get you some pretty good stuff. In addition to that, today I have also the data validation, and what that means is you can create a drop-down list from some data. So that's what these three are for. These three will really become a drop-down list for us to use within our formulas. So I already have it here, but I'll walk you through how to do it. On J3, I have a balance. And as I click it, you see this little gray arrow. Right here, I have a little drop-down, and I can pick one of those three. So how do we do that? So click on the cell that you want to have the drop-down list on. Go to Data, and you can go to Data Validation. Click that, Data Validation, and right here it kind of shows you basically some parameters that you need to choose. So right here it defaults to any value, but we want a list. We want a list of things. Right here we have ignore blanks, which is good. It keeps the drop-down list nice and clean to look at. We have in cell drop-down. So the drop-down basically is just within the cell. And then we have the source. So our source is, I'll just delete it here just so you can see it. Our source is these three right here. And as you select them, it makes a little selection formula right here. It puts the equal, L4 to L6, and it puts the dollar signs on them to make sure it doesn't move. And right there, now we just created a drop-down list right here in the cell. So again, as I showed you before, you can click the gray, and you have the three choices that are seen right here. Okay? So this is going to work in tandem with our formula today because it could be pretty easy to take a lot of data and put it into a tiny little snippet, right? So the first thing we want to do is we're going to build this formula out in pieces. So let's just get started. I'm going to do equals if logical test. We want to see if J3, I'm going to lock that, is equal to the word amount. The reason why I put that in quotations is because the cell above us, the one I selected, is text right now. So we need to put it in the formula that it is text. And that's what the quotations are for. So as long as the word, amount equals the word amount above, then everything should be true, right? Everything should check out. So if this equals amount, comma, value if true, what do you want it to do if it's true? So here we're going to do VLOOKUP. What do we want to look up? We want to look up this check number. where do we want to look? We want to look at this check number all the way to the balance. And I'll show you why I do that in a little while. So in my VLOOKUP video, I taught you that the next cell over, the next portion of the formula is the column index number. So the amount is found on column 2. We're going to put a 2 here. 0 for exact match. And we're going to close that off. So remember, that closes off the VLOOKUP formula. So now we need to keep going with the if formula that's on the outside. So I'm going to put a comma there, and value, if it's false, we're just going to put 0, just to see what it does. Click enter, and we have an amount here, and we can drag this down just to see if everything's working correctly. Our total balance here and our total balance here, they equal, so that's good. So we know that this works. So what happens if this cell doesn't equal amount? So this is where our Dropbox comes in handy. So we have this, so let's change it to coverage paid. So J3 in the formula has to equal amount for the rest of the formula to keep going. So since it doesn't, I told it to put a 0. So that's why in here, all you see are zeros. So how do we make it dynamic enough to use our drop-down list and have the numbers change based on what we're changing it to? So this is where it gets a little tricky. I'm going to go up in our formula bar. And I'm going to delete the 0 in the last parenthesis. It's basically the value if false, right? So we're going to delete that, and we're going to keep going. So right now it says now we still need to finish off the if formula. So right here, we can actually continue with another if formula. So I'm going to do if again. And we're going to start from scratch. So now our logical test for the second if formula. So bear with me and try not to get lost. I know this is a lot, but if you've ever seen the movie Inception, then you might understand what we're doing here. So logical test, what do we want to see? We want to see if J3, lock it, is equal to quotation, parenthesis, coverage, paid. So basically the next one in the list, right? And we have 3. So you can see where I'm going with this. So if J3 is equal to coverage paid, then what we're going to do, we're going to VLOOKUP. We're going to VLOOKUP this within this data set, lock it, comma, and now coverage paid is the third column over, not the second. We want to yield all of the coverage paid values. We want to put a 3 here instead of a 2. 0. Finish off the VLOOKUP. Comma again, because we're still within the second if. And you guessed it, we're going to do it a third time. If again, logical test, this lock is equal to quotation, balance, quotation, comma, value if true, we're going to VLOOKUP this number within this data set, and the balance is of course the fourth column over, so we're going to lock that, comma, 4, comma, 0 is false, finish off the VLOOKUP formula, put a comma, so now since we're still in the third if, this is the value if false. So right here we're just going to put 0, and I want you to notice, keep your eyes on the actual formula bar. As I put parentheses, they will kind of like highlight to show you which closing parenthesis goes with which portion of the formula. So as I put the first parenthesis, you saw on the third if a little bit over, it kind of highlighted just for a second. If you didn't see it, go back 10 seconds and watch it really quick. So here again, I'm going to put another closed parenthesis, and that closed off the second if. So we're going back and we're closing all of our first formulas that we did. So then here we're going to do a third closed parenthesis, and as you saw, the first if parenthesis highlighted itself just really quickly. So make sure you keep your eyes on that as I'm doing it. So here we're gonna hit enter, and we have a value here. We're gonna drag this down. Okay, so what do we have here? We have, since we currently have chosen coverage paid, it looks like it's taking the coverage paid from the check numbers, just like we wanted. So if you VLOOKUP this, within here you have this one right here. The coverage paid is the negative 1,277,000, so on, and here we have it. It's showing, so we know that this is working. And the same with this check number, we have the negative 1348. Here it is right here. And again with the other two. So watch what happens when I dynamically use this drop-down list. See what the formula does. So I'm going to take the drop-down list. I'm just going to go back to the first one, the amount. So as I click this, all of the formulas just changed based on that one cell that I changed. And again, I can do it with the balance. The balance should basically just be a flip-flop of the coverage paid, just as we see it over in the regular data set. And again, you can always verify that by taking the total of the amounts right here, matching it with the total of the amounts down here. We have the 1510, 41750, that equals the balance. That's perfect. We can change this back to coverage paid. We have the negative 1,600,000, whatever. Again, it matches, and of course with the amount, we've already verified that at the beginning of the video that this matches. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. It's a little trickier to understand, but you can do a lot with formulas that are basically dependent on a cell that's outside of the formula. So since all of these were dependent on J3, right? If that J3 was anywhere else, or if I put, if I misspelled the word amount, then it wouldn't work and stuff like that. So you got to be careful with it, but at the same time, it could really help you out, and you can kind of make like a little dashboard for yourself, right? If you were to give this to the 15 other team members in your department, and they're all working on the same sheet, they can go in and download a copy for themselves off the network or anything like that. And they can go and they can put the drop down boxes as they need. Now imagine, let's say you have like a users list, and instead of these headers, you have like Elliot here, Sarah here, John there, whoever you are. So as you change them, you can kind of see like their details, right? Stuff like that. Anything you put in the drop down list, and then you can have it work in tandem with the formula. It's pretty fancy, it's pretty impressive if you're showing someone who doesn't really know Excel. So be sure to learn this and tell your boss about it one day. He'll be real proud of you. So that's it from me today, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. See ya.